The fourth item that we need in order to get somebody onto our operation is to accept the resources from the schedule board. So what this means is if we pause and take a look at where we are in the process, we've already sent the availability email that had a URL in it that people clicked on. They took a look at the landing page of the operation and they decided whether or not they wanted to put in for a specific resource requirement, one or many resource requirements. At that point, it created some records behind the scenes, and the next step is for the mission planning team, and specifically usually the regional or national mobilization people, to actually match up the people that have signed up with the actual requirements that we have, and basically earmark a bunch of people to ensure that we have enough resources to safely conduct the operation. So at this stage, we're not actually dispatching anybody yet. We're just kind of filling in all the different roles to make sure that we have enough resources. So like I mentioned, this is probably done by regional mobilization or national mobilization. And in reality, it could be anybody that has the ability to book against the schedule board. So in order to actually book a resource requirement or earmark somebody, however you want to term that, the first thing that you would do is go to your project, go to the resource requirement tab, and then take a look at the different waves that you have. And you can see basically how many total hours are left in order to try to earmark for that particular thing. And for this example, I'm going to select the Wave 1 General Responders requirement that we have. And then we can hit this book button right here in order to actually start earmarking people. So it's going to open this schedule board. And unfortunately at the moment we have a limitation where we have to change this drop down to days, and we've been unable to kind of hard code that, but hopefully that'll be done soon. So here we have on the left hand side we've got the filter criteria. In the middle we have the list of people, and of course normally for an operation we're going to have a lot more people than 4, but in this case this is just our test information, our test data. Once we select somebody, on the right hand side this menu will appear, and this is just simply like once we select the person that we want for this particular role, then we'd hit this book button in order to actually accept them. So real quick, looking at the filter, we can set specific dates. By default it's going to be the same dates that we already had in our resource requirement. It's also going to be the same role that we had selected in our resource requirement. So these things will automatically populate. But if you need to, you can actually change either the role or the characteristics. And these are all the TR qualifications. And you could start from maybe the more difficult qualification, book some people for that, and then go to an easier qualification. And then at the end, you could book a bunch of general responders as well, just to kind of fill in the number of hours that you're looking to try to do. If you have a wave specific to a characteristic, like in this case we have a wave for Sawyers, we would want to try to book that first probably before the general responders, just to ensure that we're not accidentally booking somebody for the lowest level role whenever they can actually fill a higher level role. One of the other characteristics that's likely to be in here is called deployable, and this just ensures that the people on your list have actually met all the criteria to become deployable. Because you are going to have a lot of people that sign up that aren't actually deployable yet, so that's one thing you'll probably want. You can do additional things, so if we want Sawyers, for example, we'd hit search, and it would limit it to the people that have that particular qualification. And if you don't get enough responses, you can get rid of characteristics until you have enough people to actually book against. Now, if you choose a characteristic, one thing you have to be wary of is that sometimes it will put in this rating. So it's kind of like a 1 through 3 star rating, familiar, good, and proficient. We're not currently using this. We may use it in the future, but if this pops up, you can just click anywhere to get rid of it. So looking at my list, I've got Ed Glover that's available for the entire wave. And this is our development environment. So normally if someone was flying up for a flight wave, they would have a complete block of time set aside, because that's what they're doing when they click on the landing page calendar. They're basically opening up their availability so that it shows up correctly here. But if you have drivers, like local people, they have a different experience on the landing page calendar. They can actually select individual days. And for that purpose, you'll have to make sure that you're booking enough resources for each day in order to account for the number of teams that you have. But that's probably going to be a higher level video or a more in-depth video specific to the mobilization process. And so we will pick up that conversation there. So in this case, I want to book Ed Glover. I'm just going to make sure this says accept. Go ahead and hit book. And it does a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. It essentially makes a record for each day that I've selected him for, so that we can eventually put him on a specific strike team. In addition, it's also decremented the overall number of hours that I need to earmark for. And so 2,800 seems like a lot, but it's our 40 people times 10 hours a day times 7 days. So that's it for the schedule board. The key takeaway here is you want to make sure this is set to days. There's also some options in here if you want to adjust like how many people show up per page, the row height, column width, things of that nature. You can choose to play with this if you want. So at this point now I've booked a number of resources against the specific resource requirement on the schedule board. And you can always see kind of where you're at by going to the registrant tab. And you'll see all the different statuses of the people that have signed up so far. So here I have a whole bunch of people that are accepted. I've got a few that are missing prereqs. I've got my test user is actually outside of my distance requirement. And what that actually does is basically gives me a very specific corrective action to go do. The other thing that you can do, if you select somebody, you'll get a menu up here where you can email that person directly. You can tell them to stand by, and that will change their current view. So let me hit standby on my dude, and then I'll refresh over here. And we should see a different page here that tells me basically just to stand by. So you can see the landing pages are changing dynamically based on the values that we have. The other option that you'll see here if I select my test user again is something called resubmit availability. So I'll go ahead and click that. It changes my status, and if I refresh my landing page, I should see a note somewhat to the effect of we have your registration, however that particular wave is already full. And so go change your availability. Basically we're asking people to go submit for additional waves so that we can actually use them in the project. So this is good for if you have wave 1 is already full and you're just trying to solicit availability for future stuff that still has yet to be totally filled out.